Now let's return to the situation in the United States, because in the wake of the terrorist act which saw parcel bombs sent to public figures in the United States, President Donald Trump has effectively blamed the media for encouraging political violence.
But journalists point the finger at the president himself for fomenting hate and threatening free speech. The Society of Professional Journalists is the largest journalism organisation in America, and just last week, its president, Alex Tarquinio, wrote to Donald Trump imploring him to lay aside political rhetoric and stand up for press freedom. Alex Tarquinio joins us now. Welcome, Alex. Just tell us why you decided to write to the president.
Yes, and that was before the problem escalated with the recent bomb scare. At the time, we were very concerned. It's hard to believe. It's like each week we have a different scare against journalists. Last week we had the evolving news coming out about Jamal Khashoggi, the columnist for the Washington Post. And at that time, in the middle of that news coming out, Trump, on a campaign stop, praised a U.S. congressman who had assaulted a journalist in the progress of doing his job. And many journalists, not just those at our organization, were really appalled to see him praise a politician for assaulting a journalist at the same time we were revealing these horrifying details of the death of Mr. Khashoggi. This week, we have a different crisis. I'm speaking to you from Midtown Manhattan. Right around the corner, we have CNN, which was recently evacuated because of an actual bomb, not just a bomb scare. And in the middle of the arrest of an individual this morning, the president tweeted out "bomb" in quotation marks, as if this was somehow fake news. So this is an ongoing issue that we have here, with the president questioning the news media and the veracity of our reporting, and it's actually leading to a public health risk.
And as you point out, one of the targets of those parcel bombs was CNN. CNN chief Jeff Zucker criticised Donald Trump for encouraging threats and violence and saying there's a serious lack of understanding in the White House about the seriousness of the continued attacks on the media. Is that something you agree with?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is a nonpartisan issue. The president sometimes accuses the press of being partisan, increasing the polarization here. But as a matter of fact, a free speech and a free press is a nonpartisan issue. Both Democrats and Republicans do support a free press in this country. We have a strong tradition of this. And what I think people may be aware of in your country is that we have a very polarized election going on November 6th. 100% of the House of Representatives and a third of the Senate will be elected. This is a very closely watched election, and we really don't know what's going to happen. The polls have been all over the place. So that's the reason for the increasing polarization here.
Alex, Donald Trump has portrayed the media as the enemy of the people. He labels news that he sees as unfavourable, of course, as fake news. And he's done his best to discredit reputable news services. So how difficult in this environment is it for journalists to do their job?
Well, he not only calls it fake news, but this is where it actually becomes dangerous. I mean, during hurricane season, there are people who were doubting the veracity of our hurricane coverage. Just this week, Lou Dobbs, a prominent business commentator on Fox News, as arguably the president's favorite network, called into question the veracity of this bomb scare, even though it was widely reported that these were real explosive devices that were being mailed. Lou Dobbs sent 2 tweets, which he later retracted. And Lou Dobbs has 1.8 million followers on Twitter, not as many as the president's 55 million, but still enough to be very influential. And then just this week, we had reports of a protester showing up with a sign that said "fake bombs." So by labeling the news fake news, he is actually creating a real public health risk in this country.
Is it fair to say that he's baiting journalists and that you're perhaps taking the bait?
Yeah, that is a real concern. And here at the Society of Professional Journalists, we do not respond every time the president calls out the media, which he's doing now on an almost daily basis. And I do have to say, in fairness, that he has moderated his tone during the last few days when we've had this active, really domestic terrorist crisis in this country. However, he will moderate his tone and say that we should not have political divisiveness and we should not tolerate acts of political terrorism, and then turn on a dime and blame the media for that political divisiveness.
This perhaps has wider implications too. The New York Times publisher A.G. Sulzberger has written to the president saying his rhetoric against journalists is being used by some regimes to justify sweeping crackdowns on journalists, eroding democracy and eroding free speech. Is that free speech under threat in America?
It's under threat in America, but it also has much wider implications. As we know, two of our colleagues have received long jail sentences in Myanmar, completely unjustified. Turkey, which is pursuing the case against the Saudis and what they have done on their soil in Turkey against Jamal Khashoggi, yet it is still the largest jailer of journalists. And I do believe that some regime leaders have taken a lead from Donald Trump that if the president of the United States will tolerate this activity and, in fact, fuel this anti-press rhetoric, that other leaders are following his lead.
Alex Tarquinio from the Society of Professional Journalists, great to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.